All righty then. All righty then. All righty then. Good morning, sir. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. You there? Where'd you go? Are you sure? Not hearing you, sure. Not hearing you. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, what about now?
There you are. There you are. There you are. Brilliant.
I had to push one more button.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
They don't
goodness.
make the audio thing obvious, that you have to click that extra button. It's poor
Well, no,
design.
it does because it asks you to join with, Wi-Fi or whatever. And I'm like, yep, okay, click it.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to stay open, but it doesn't. Then it mutes you.
Right. If you accidentally touch the screen anywhere else, it takes that screen that notice to join with Wi-Fi. It removes it.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. That's why I'm saying it's poor design.
Mm-hmm.
And you say join audio, you already think that's there. I don't know why you have to click that. I mean, what else are you going to join with? It's not like it's giving you any other option. So,
Yeah, that part doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? So,
and
oh my
it's
goodness.
something that new people get stuck on because it's not obvious. So
Well, I'll tell you,
yeah,
they don't make a lot of
yeah,
their of this particular app very useful.
yeah.
I had to do a Zoom recording last night with with a young lady, and I was waiting and waiting and waiting for it to show up. That okay, because I had recorded it. It was, I don't know, way towards late evening because I recorded her in the afternoon, and it was later in the evening. Well, I didn't come to find out that it takes them quite a few hours for them to upload and store in
Yeah,
their cloud the recording. So it's like,
yeah,
oh, well, that's why it takes him, like
yeah,
sometimes till
yeah.
the next
I,
day
I,
for the
I,
video.
I record on my local computer.
Hmm.
Then it's recording as you go. But then you need space on your hard drive. Obviously, you said yours was full. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, so that is a better option if you can. Uh, yeah.
yeah.
But you
Um,
should be able to free space on your hard drive. Definitely should be able.
what's that?
You should be able to free up space on your hard drives.
Yeah, I just haven't had that chance yet too. I've been trying to get CJ going with school,
Yeah.
get
Cool, cool, cool.
figure out what I'm doing,
Yeah, exciting. All right, so tell me all about the interview in detail.
Oh, okay. Observations. Um, One of the observations was he was very hard to pull or get a read from, very hard to um, get connected to.
Interesting. Interesting. And
Yeah.
and why would you say that would be? Like in what way was he hard? Was he kind of deliberately being evasive or obfuscating, or was it just that he was different and unknown?
Um,
Or
well, I gave it, the few minutes thinking, well, maybe it's just because he's not quite comfortable with me. But we had several conversations, both in chat and on video, before we did this live. So I
ah,
thought, oh, okay, so it's not unfamiliarity. He
yeah,
knew ahead of time what I was going to ask and where I was going to be going. He does videos every day. He puts out,
yeah,
live videos, and he does plenty of lives. So I
yeah.
went back and I looked at some of those lives, and maybe it's just that he's really, really nervous about being in front of camera or something. I don't know, but
Yeah,
he
yeah.
didn't,
Or,
he
or being
didn't.
live, or he's not in control, or something like that. There's many
Yeah.
reasons. But it seemed to end good. I just saw the very last, when you were signing off and saying goodbye,
Yeah.
and it seemed to end fine. So yeah,
Well, there was a point though. I mean, he had told me he did not want to talk about the topic of narcissism whatsoever, even though that's what he posts about every single day.
wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, he's
That's
like, I
very
really don't want to talk on the topic of narcissism. And, I just don't because, I'm saturated with it, yada, yada.
yeah. Oh, good, good.
Like, all right, cool. It's not a topic that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So
So
did you talk about replacement then? And
yeah, so no, instead what, I just let him kind of take some of the wheel of, I would ask a question.
yeah,
Um, it was almost as if he was struggling and he had his book right there in front of him. So I would give him the page number. Um, and I quit doing that after the first couple of questions because it was obvious he wasn't interested in looking them up. But it was almost as if he had no interest in talking about his book.
huh?
It's like, dude, that's why you're here.
That's unusual.
Yeah. So finally, I listened, and where he was he was really
Yeah.
wanting to talk about his last relationship, but I
There
just
you
let him
go.
ramble. Yeah,
You just let him ramble.
kind of about his relationship,
That's
and
fantastic. That's
you know,
hearing. That's hearing
yeah,
him. Yeah, because he obviously has a need there somehow.
yeah.
Yeah, unresolved
So
for him.
and
Very.
then he lightened up. Then he
There you
started,
go. There you go. There you go.
settling down a little bit, and I was like, good Lord, I never want to do an
Yeah,
interview like
people.
that again.
Yeah, but that you were practicing hearing because you talk about what you assume. All right, you've got a context here to talk about stuff. So then you say, okay, well, this isn't going anywhere. You try something else that's not working, and you keep going until you find what it is. So very cool,
Yeah.
very cool, very cool,
Mm.
very cool. Great stuff,
So,
great stuff. I mean,
well,
so it
anyways,
seems. So did he at least get some? He got some stuff off his chest. I'm assuming at least.
I think so.
Yeah. No,
Um,
he seemed happy when I saw the end. I mean,
yeah,
from what I saw, it seemed wow. It's like, wow, okay, it was a good session. Maybe not brilliant, but good. So
yeah, yeah.
that was,
There were some people who stayed all the way through it, which was really good.
yeah.
We had
Wow.
about 17 viewers, which
Wow.
was
So
good.
that shows. Yeah,
So that worked out well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I thought this was interesting. Um, this person has been this particular person had been trying for some time to get my attention.
Are you talking about your guest now or
Yes, my
a
guess,
viewer? Your
my
guest.
guess.
Ah,
He had been trying for several weeks to get my attention, and
oh,
yeah, and I mean he's all right. So, anyways, trying to get my attention, and where was I? Then yesterday, it was yesterday. It was the day before. Um, we were talking about some of the topics that a main theme that we were going to try and run with, or did we want to just let the conversation see where it goes? My preference is let it flow. And so then he said, well, I'll be honest with you, before I did this interview, I've had a couple of people who have um, messaged me and tried to put a bug in my ear that, I needed to stay away from you.
wow.
Like what? I said, wow, I don't know anything about that. I didn't bite. I just said, I don't know anything about that. But,
Yeah,
if I suppose if somebody's got an issue with me, they can bring it up with me. Or if you have questions, feel free to ask.
yeah,
I am very much an open book.
yeah.
That I can't think of anybody that I would have deliberately offended. And
Well,
said, oh, he's like, well, so then he goes, oh, well, don't worry about it. I got your back. And that part really kind of made me sit up straight.
Yeah, I don't know. That it didn't sound right to me. It sounded
No,
like just something that he made up or something. I don't know.
yeah,
Just to
yeah.
you and see.
Anytime somebody tells you, hey, I got your back. In other words, I'm trying to get your attention. I'm your number one person. I'm
Yeah,
the one who's gonna
trying to
be
get in
there.
there. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I honestly feel that was it was that right there that kind of added to that piece of I can't read this person.
yeah, yeah.
And it bothers me that I have a hard time sometimes reading people, really so that skill of hearing them, but I sometimes I'm too trusting of them, and other times I read them completely wrong, and
Yeah,
I will take
yeah,
an action that they do could be completely untrustworthy and
yeah, yeah.
total asshattery, and you know,
I think you got to set your strategy up so that you're okay either way.
yes,
That's the only way to deal with it. And the
yes,
end of yeah,
yes.
very powerful
So
strategy. So
well,
like
and
it,
it's
if the guy is up to no good and he's just trying to wiggle his way in for whatever weird reasons, so what? You're not going to commit to anything. And if he's okay, it doesn't make any difference either. You just treat it for what it is. So
right. Well, and that's something that I feel like most times I don't need to tell people that, especially men, that no, I am not in a position to commit to any kind of relationship.
yeah,
I think that by my actions, by my words, by how I conduct myself, that that becomes obvious that I am just fine being
yeah.
with who I am right here.
There you go. There
Um,
you go. There you go.
so
There you go.
that's the impression that I have in my head. Um, and that's not to say people aren't still going to try, but usually those are the ones telling you what, they're usually the Nigerians, and I hate to stereotype like this, but it's true.
Oh,
So they're
I hear you.
usually,
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
yeah,
it used to be, and now it's Nigerians all over the show. It used to be, Pakistanians and Indians who were after the woman big time. I've even had some of
yes,
them that think Syl is short for Sylvia. It's like, seriously, how do you get this right? You don't see the profile picture? It's like, what the hell?
yeah. Well, come on. When some young, when you get a picture in your inbox of some young 20, 30 something, beefcake type guy, and he's like,
Why? Why? Why?
hi, beautiful. For real, I am your grandma's age.
Yeah, yeah. So I have fun with him, like one guy is chatting me up, right? So he comes, he's general somebody or other, right? So he's got this picture of American general. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's chatting me up big time. And I said to him basically, well, are you do you want to marry me? I said, yeah. So he says, well, yes, just after all this long nonsense. So I say, well, I'm very flattered, but, I don't go that way, and was he horrified that I was a guy? Oh, because he was from Pakistan and that culture is not very,
No.
gay friendly. Let's put it that way. So, I knew this was the end result. So I said, like, yeah, because he was full on, catfishing type of a whole deal.
Yeah. Oh, there's plenty of them. There are plenty of them, but so I've been very I think I have cultivated anyways a strong, and it's not that I wouldn't want a relationship one day, but I'm also not going to go looking for one
Correct,
either. I don't,
correct, correct. If it comes,
I
it comes.
just,
It's an
exactly.
attunement thing. It's an attunement thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm open to it, but I'm not going to go fishing.
Exactly, exactly. It has to really be something that is right and impeccable and meant to be and awesome
Yeah,
and in attunement and everything. Otherwise, the effort's not worth the reward. Exactly. Yeah.
very much so.
Mm,
Very
exactly.
much so.
As appropriate in the biggest capital A sense of the word. Yeah.
Yes. Um, uh, oh, I know what I was going to ask you. Program wise, I finished up. I went all through the feelings and beliefs, but I don't think we've done the tasks and exercises together. So I didn't know
No,
what
no,
you
we
wanted to
haven't.
do about that. But
Oh, absolutely. I want to do it all. Absolutely. We
okay.
just, so many other stuff that's magical has come our
Oh,
way.
I know.
So
I
it's
know.
very
And I
cool,
got to
and
looking at,
always me as appropriate. By the way, just
um,
also in terms of working with your own clients,
uh-huh.
it is, the center column for me, or the thing that I really pay attention to, is pertinence and relevance. Yeah. So that,
Okay.
when we discuss, like now we're discussing the interview or whatever, it's pertinent and it's relevant, right?
That's
Well,
true.
at least it's pertinent, and I make it relevant because we connect it to wave impeccability or moreness or whatever our theme of the day is, or the week or the month or whatever we're working on. So that
Uh-huh.
activity, makes it relevant. But that pertinence and then the relevance is really, it's personalized emphasis. So it's really potent emphasis because it's personal, right? The pertinence and relevance makes it personal. Therefore, the emphasis is additional to just regular emphasis. The emphasis of attention and focus. There's
Right.
more to it. So this is a way to leverage learning and to have things stick and, to retrain the brain. It's very, very powerful. It's truly magical. It's awesome.
Very good. Well, emphasis had been kind of on my mind lately. I know
There you go.
I'm not quite sure where my posts have been lately. Part of me was a bit annoyed. I was feeling very irritated, and that was just because I did find out that there were several other people who had the same experience as I did with that particular promoter, the one that I almost got twisted up with.
Yeah, interesting.
They had the same experiences and feelings. And their impression was that there's an agenda there that is not a very good one. And I let them say that. I wasn't about to offer my 2 cents. I've been down that road before, where people will saddle up to you and be all buddy, just to get information, and then they turn around and twist it, and before you know it, then your name is smeared. So I learned a long time ago, never gossip, just don't salt your coffee.
Exactly. Gossip, especially what goes around, comes around,
Yeah. So.
And anytime gossip, what are you saying to the person you're gossiping with? I can't trust this person.
Yes.
Yes. You're just telling them, don't trust me. I can gossip about somebody else. I can gossip about you. So it's just business.
Yes. So then, I learned that a long, long time ago. I don't like that mentality. I don't like that particular maturity level.
Exactly.
It's hurtful. It was good to feel validated, but at the same time, then I thought, okay, how can I get myself out of this particular community? I am not against, and I said this on the interview too, I'm not against the topic of narcissism. I think it's important. However, you can become too saturated with it, where all you're doing is focusing on that.
Exactly.
And then you get misinformation because you're so willing and ready to believe anything that comes along that has the tag of narcissist with it, that you pretty soon are believing these most ridiculous facts, or not facts, but statements. So I had been working the last couple of days on trying to not rescue my own brand, the Unbound, but kind of in a way doing that.
Yeah,
just
good.
It's a powerful cleaning brand. It up. Yeah, cleaning it up, making sure that if that the quote book goddess is directed solely towards the podcast and the author interviews, and nothing else. And I thought it was really kind of interesting because that one doesn't grow, but my Sher Unbound, that grows steadily. I get new followers every day. It's slow.
It's a great thing. Book goddess is tricky because anytime you add goddess in there, it can put people off, and so you have to be careful.
It did me. That wasn't my idea for that name. I didn't like the name, but that was what the promoter came up with. I'm like, are you serious?
I was wondering how you got to this name.
It wasn't me.
Okay,
that wasn't me.
That makes more
sense. And then eventually, his idea was eventually completely do away with Sher Unbound and everything would just be the book goddess. And I'm like, what? Why?
Exactly. It's already
Why would you?
working.
It has nothing to do. I said, it has nothing to do with what I do and who I am. He's like, well, you just need to quit giving away your work for free. And well, I give away a little bit for free. I give something away of value, a reason for people to come to and read the material. So if they find value in this, they might find value in the book. They might find value in coaching or in future programs.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you want them to get to know you.
Yeah.
And once they get to know you, then they go from there. So
Right. So anyway, I I don't know if this is possible or if this was just my fantasy thinking. Whether or not somebody could deliberately undermine someone's brand for their own gain. Is that possible? Do people do that?
Sure. If they see it as some kind of a threat to them in some way, it's possible. Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, not
Well,
possible, but yeah, it happens for sure. Yeah.
a threat to
Well, if they
the
see it
other
as some
brands
kind
that
of
they want to
competition or
promote.
whatever, I would.
Competition.
Yeah, but I mean, who's competing with you? Really, no one. So
No,
yeah.
no. So I haven't seen anybody competing.
Bye.
I usually offer to work with people, but I think what I'm going to try to do is just slowly um, take away that book goddess brand because I'm not comfortable with it. It took
I
me
agree.
entirely,
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
it took me too long to
It just
develop
sounds statistical with the
Unbound.
goddess part, you know. I mean, it's not
It
meant
does.
that way. But if you don't know, you say, wow, you know, if you're the book goddess, you got to be like, I don't know, J.K. Rowling or something, you know. It's
Yeah.
just, you see,
Yeah.
it doesn't make whoever, you know, that guy, obviously you can hear from his comments here and all this stuff. He's got an entirely contorted and distorted perception of life and reality and how things work. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
here's the interesting thing. Okay. He will
Mhm.
not, and this is where I've been trying to use my understanding and my discernment because he will not tell anybody, and this is totally fine, but he doesn't divulge or share anything about his own story, how he got into developing this narc abuse TV, where supposedly the channel is to the purpose of this particular platform or channel is to help people recover from narcissistic abuse.
Oh,
But he instead of bringing people on to talk about the recovery from it, he will post and promote people with their stories of abuse. I don't know.
He's just trying, you know, he's fishing in the dark. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's desperate. He doesn't know, you know, he's just trying to figure something out to get
well, I
something
know
done.
that
So,
he hasn't gotten that far. There's only like 2,000 followers, and which okay, fine, but there's like several
you're doing great.
different,
You just keep at what you're doing, you
yeah,
know, just keep
but
plugging away.
there's several different channels. I just none of what he had requested or suggested that I do was feeling like me.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I have a choice here. Like we've been talking about, I have a choice and I can accept or reject it. Just because he says he's an expert in this field doesn't make him an expert. I can say I'm an expert.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean that it's true.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I don't know. Why did I get annoyed? I got annoyed because, like I said, once again, I'm still kind of frustrated with myself for letting my ego get hooked like that. And so I'm pulling apart all of the lessons, all of the things that I missed intentionally.
Good.
I missed them intentionally. I missed the red flags intentionally because I wanted that feel good, that hype.
Exactly. But the desperation, a bit of neediness, corrupting things.
Yeah. And it came in at a time when did he approach me? Yeah, when he approached me, honestly, it was right at the end of the time when I think it's almost like a season that I have and it's in the summer and it's Larry's birthday. It's a whole bunch of different anniversary. It's our anniversary date. It's our birthday, his birthday. It's
you're a bit vulnerable when you approach.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's like 3 or 4 different dates back to back, all within a period of 6 weeks that I try really hard not to place emphasis on. And this year I was a lot better, but I was still struggling. And so that leads me to this other word, emphasis. I've been asking myself, why am I placing emphasis on my frustration? Because when I do, then I become more frustrated and I don't feel well.
Exactly.
I feel
Emphasis
I
feeds
had
on
a
itself, right?
fever. Yeah, I had a fever the other night. I went to bed with a fever, and
Wow.
it was a pretty high one. Um, it was sitting at 101, and
Wow.
um, yeah, and normally if I get a fever like that, it's not because of something medical. It's my
Mm,
body fighting itself. It's stress.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I will get those from stress. Well, I had most terrible dreams, and um, it doesn't help either. Well, okay, so now I keep thinking, well, no, it's the sinus infection because I do have one. And um, I thought, no, it's just my allergies and sinus infection stuff. And it's like, nope, Sherry, it's your body. Your body is telling you stop stressing. Quit placing
Exactly.
emphasis on the things that are nothing but crap.
Exactly.
Just don't.
Exactly. Emphasis feeds on emphasis, which is why when we discuss something like narcissists, we are discussing it, but we aren't emphasizing. We may get
Okay.
into detail, but there's no emphasis. It's kind of very casual, and you have to really pay
Yes.
attention to the emotionality involved. So we're almost discussing it like scientists would be discussing, their experiment, right? It's very
Yes.
dispassionate, and you almost got a step removed from it. You're not interested in it. You're not involved in it. It's not important. It's just because we are kind of working through it. It's like, you're busy doing a math problem and you're working it through to get to the end. That's it.
Right.
It's
Right.
very, very, very important to have this mindset. Very important.
Yes. Well,
Very
because
useful also.
if I don't, I will get sucked right into those emotions that I don't need to be attaching myself to. That's
Exactly.
why I was saying it was so important for me to ask that question about, removing myself. Oh, what was it? About not attaching to the emotions of a situation,
Yeah.
which that was the first for me to be able to recognize that.
Very important. Very, very,
That
very important.
was that was huge because I was not, and it was what I had sent you the message about, but to not to not place um specific value or attachment on a situation is big for me,
Yeah.
really big. To just be able to look at it casually. Same thing with, like, the topic of narcissism, which I get frustrated with it because on one hand, I know that it is a worldwide problem. And
Yes. Yes.
I know that it's getting
Yes.
worse,
Yes.
because
Yes.
people are needy.
Yes.
They're floundering. They're not getting
Yes.
the structure in their childhood that they used to get.
Yes.
We have changed. And
Exactly.
so people are just floundering and they're showing more and more narcissistic traits. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that we need to go around calling people inhuman or monsters,
Oh,
or
absolutely not.
throwing them out with the bathwater and saying you're worthless, you're never going
Right.
to
Right.
change.
Right. So take that passion and leverage it. How can you leverage that passion to deal with narcissism? By sharing replacements.
Okay. I mean,
That's how. That's how.
okay.
Because it doesn't matter. You say narcissism is bad. Fine, everybody knows it's bad, but what can we do about it? Well, here's alternative options, and that's very important.
Okay. By
Yes,
sharing replacements.
by sharing replacements and emphasizing the replacements. In other words, again, if you focus on being good, it's very hard to be bad. So,
Yes.
whereas if you focus on removing badness, you just get to zero. And people can't be a zero. So they go back to what they know.
Right. And then I
So,
don't know why. So you said something that just popped into my head, something else that was said from the person I interviewed.
ah,
He he said, "Well, I'd like to offer you a bit of what did he literally he said, I'd like to offer you a bit of advice."
yeah,
And
yeah.
he said, sometimes when we're talking to people, we can communicate much better with people if we are more our authentic selves and try not to use words that most people don't understand.
Aha, interesting. Well, too bad, guy. This is
Well,
my
that's what I thought to my So I
you know.
told him, I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to change how I speak. I said, I'm not going to justify myself to you, but I'm just going to let you know I have struggled for years with trying to find my voice to speak, and I'm not going to change it for anybody.
Yeah. Well, also there, there's an assumption of the basic paradigm. In his world, the basic paradigm is you want to connect to everybody, not
Yeah,
necessarily. You can connect to everybody, but then what?
right,
This doesn't really help you because they aren't your market, they aren't your customer. They just
right,
followers, they're just connectors. So, you want to connect to people who are your people, who you want to connect with, who
right.
are interested in what you're interested in learning, growing, etc. So it's a very big deal. It's a very big deal. Yeah.
Well, apparently there's a few in that. This is what's really strange, still. I observed it from a distance. There's a community. Okay, there's some reason I'm like fuzzy now, but
I hear you. I hear you fine.
okay. There's all these different communities online, right? You're aware of this. So
Yeah,
this
yeah,
particular narcissist community in Instagram, they all follow each other, and there's like this little world, just like Miles had built,
yeah.
where everybody knows each other and they support each other, and they're, uh, I don't know. I just found the whole thing very distasteful. It wasn't my cup of tea. But these are the same people who were stating that, well, I'm just a little too profound, and some of the things that I write and say, they just don't understand.
Huh.
Well, I understand it, and
Yeah,
I've got a whole lot of other people who understand it. And then I was thinking to
yeah,
myself, besides that, if I was not understandable, there's no way in heaven that I was thinking in my head, there's no way in heaven Sil would let me put this stuff out here if it was not understandable.
yeah, yeah.
He would probably say, Sher, we need to talk.
Yeah.
So
At some point, no matter how simple you try and make things, somebody's not going to understand you. So
right,
when you understand that, then life gets very simple, and
right. And
it's
I'm
where they're
writing
at,
for
not where
me,
you're at. Yeah,
but I'm writing for me. I'm not writing for them.
exactly,
This is
exactly,
my journey.
exactly,
And if they
exactly,
find value, then
exactly.
amazing.
Exactly. And okay, so if this is something, you do have followers, if it's more common, then just put at the bottom, say, hey, if anything in my post is of interest to you and also doesn't, you don't fully connect to or resonate or want more information on or want to understand more, just ask.
Yeah, exactly.
Build asking into your posts.
There you go. There you go. Just ask.
Very simple. Very
Yeah.
simple.
And there's a lot of times I'll put a little blurb at the bottom, hey, if you want more information, check the highlights, check the story details, check out whatever, check their profile for more information.
Exactly.
Or, message me.
I
I'm
mean, yeah,
open to that
exactly.
too.
Yeah, I mean, don't complain
Um,
that you don't understand. It's not the issue is because then you're not asking. I can't possibly write for everybody to understand. Sorry,
right,
that's just unrealistic. It doesn't happen. So if you
right.
don't understand, you've got to ask. That's on you, not on me.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
it shows anybody who's complaining about that, it shows their basic underlying mindset. They want to be taught. And this is why I don't care for this whole teacher logic and idea. And
No.
people have this idea, oh, a good teacher is going to teach me. In other words, I don't
Yeah.
have to do anything. I can just sit back and I'm going to be changed and transformed. Sorry, it don't work that way.
Yeah.
So that's, it's a laziness really and a spoiltness where they want it done for them. No,
Yes.
sorry. Well, there you just put yourself right out of the running as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned.
Press play,
I'm not
right?
interested.
That's what they
So
want. They're just like press
qualify
play
yourself.
so I can sit back and watch the movie kind of thing, right?
Exactly. And then I'll know it and I'll be fine because I've been taught because you're a good teacher. No, you've got to still do something. It's astonishing how people have this assumption, and it's a terrible assumption and
Oh
belief
my
and
goodness.
fear.
Somebody did put that in a comment about me, that I was, a strong writer, a good teacher, and something else. And I'm like, teacher? I've never considered myself a teacher, and I don't want to be a teacher. No, thank you.
exactly. But I mean, you have to let it be a little bitty because it's such a nuanced, detailed point that it's
Yes, it
very
is.
hard for people to comprehend. So I just leave it
Yeah.
alone. Okay,
Yeah.
they're gonna see me as a teacher until they get to know me, and then they're gonna understand the limitations of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Teach is a very loose term. We do teach, but in a very different way, in a really excellent way. I mean, a real teacher is one who essentially is encouraging or supporting people to learn, and that's what we do.
Uh-huh.
We're facilitating them to learn. That's just the most ideal teaching. So you don't actually teach. It's a bit of a coexisting contradiction, but it doesn't matter. When people really get that, then it all changes.
Oh, see, and I didn't so the last couple of days I've been focused on emphasis on making sure that I am being true to myself, true to my purpose, to what I stand for.
Yeah.
That I'm not trying to fill the shoes that somebody else thinks I ought to be, because I work too hard to get out of that. And I've just been focused also on not emphasizing, my irritation at any one particular community or topic or idea. I've been trying to stay away from that, knowing that I can't change anyone. All I could do is give guidance, show alternatives, which I love that word replacement. But then I really did learn that lesson of whatever I place emphasis on, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So replacement is much better than alternative, right? Because of the implication. An alternative is, well, it's I've got a choice and kind of things are more or less even. And it's like, okay, one thing's alternative, it doesn't matter. What I'm going to eat, I could eat this, or alternatively, I could eat that, which means I could eat either. Replacement, though, it has this automatic implication that, well, if you're replacing something, whatever you're replacing wasn't quite 100% an ideal, yes? And
Okay.
needed replacing. So it's very
So
subtle, very small, but yeah. So definitely replacement in this context is powerful and necessary.
replacement versus alternative. That's something I'm going to have to
Yeah.
kind of
I
really.
mean, you have to, depending on the circumstance, alternative could be appropriate. It's just, in the case of where we are looking for something relative to narcissism, there's not an alternative to narcissism. It's a replacement. There is no
Yeah.
alternative. Yeah. I mean, it is an alternative technically, but you see what I mean? Alternative implies this kind of choice. No, there's not really choice once you understand it. So yeah, definitely needs replacing. Yes.
I think it's interesting. Um,
The
and I
nuance.
do want to continue on with that paradigm of, why am I not thinking here? The superiority paradigm.
Paradigm. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Um,
Anytime you want to do that, no
I
problem.
definitely want to get into that, so that I can understand it better. I have
Yes.
been doing some work in the
Yes.
background. However, still honestly, it's almost as if I haven't found two agreeing points from any psychologist, psychiatrist, scientist, anybody on a narcissist.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Some say,
Yep.
yes, you can heal them. Others say, no, you can't. You can only
Yeah.
manage them.
Yeah.
Some say that it was, that this is genetic. Others say, no, they're created.
My recommendation is just stay away from conventional psychology.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend.
Yeah.
Develop your own. That's what I did.
Yeah.
When I was a teenager and psychotherapy, it started to come in before that. Yes, obviously it's been around for a long time before that, but it wasn't something that was, at least in that culture that I was in, something that people would talk about. So, in the 70s,
Right.
after the 60s, things got to be, well, it's a bit behind there, so
Yeah.
70s was like the 60s, a little bit. Not very little, but very watered down. But nonetheless, so at least people could start talking about stuff, and so this psychotherapy got into general conversation, right?
Yes, it did.
It just to give an idea of the conservatism, divorce was not a word used in polite conversation.
Uh-uh.
Like, oh, they're getting divorced. You'd whisper it. You wouldn't say it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you know that. Okay. So psychotherapy was very much the same thing, but the ideas started to get out there. And then, when I thought this through, I was horrified because, well, you're going somewhere and you're going to talk about your problems. And I said, no, 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 no. This is just going to make things worse because you are going to be focused on your problems. And the moment you have this world of problems, you're suddenly going to connect to more and more problems. I saw this with my own personal development, that if
Ah,
you're
okay.
honest and you start to get into saying, what are my problems? Suddenly what was not really a problem, but because you're saying you're really honest, right? Let's say something is a 1% problem. If I get in the bubble and you ask me what is problems, my inner bureaucrats, the technical computer side, it brings up the thing that's a 1% problem.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really a problem that affects my life? No, not at all. It's totally, it's trivial, it's irrelevant, but technically it's a problem. So now we say, oh, what other problems do you have? And I bring up the 1% problem. Now I focus on it and it becomes my world. And now this is what happens with people who go to psychotherapy. They end up in this bubble of problems and suddenly they start to see more problems because, of course, their brain is also at the same time being trained via emphasis to see problems. So it feeds on
Oh,
itself. It's a terrible, terrible, absolutely horrible system. And what really, really bothered me was I'm saying, hey, 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 wait a second, you bloody psychologist, you don't understand. I didn't have the word emphasis then. I used attention. You don't understand the power of attention, that when you pay attention, you bring more of it and you create the world and the bubble and all this. I was astonished at the absolute just limitation of psychologists and didn't get their own understanding of psychology. So I said, nope, sorry, no, no, no. And also then, I did that 1 year of psychology. And,
yeah.
the psychology professors, I used this and I looked at them and I said, dudes, you're not applying what you're talking about. So sorry. You may know it,
Yeah.
but you don't understand the power of application. Again, a great failing in your psychology, that they didn't really, really understand psychology. So, I've been something I thought about recently, I said, yeah, I am a philosopher, but I'm more so than a philosopher. I'm actually a psychologist. In other words, somebody who creates their own psychology, like a philosopher, somebody who creates their own philosophy. So,
Well,
that's
that's
not a term that exists out there, but it does apply. It's valid. So,
but that's
um,
okay, and
gotta create your
it,
own, because that whole system is, and if you take the American Psychological Association, right, not too long ago, this is, I don't know, within the last 2 decades, I think, being gay was classified as a disease.
yes,
It was legally and technically, I don't know if legally, but it was technically, according to them, a disease. It's
yeah,
just like, I mean, really, seriously, dudes, your logic is just messed up here. And all sorts of things, So the same, I had this big, long discussion with somebody on, I've got a nice, long, big post about it too. A psychologist, sorry, they're not a psychologist, they're a psychologist, who took umbrage at my use of the word crazy. Oh, you're stigmatizing mental illness and all this. And it took me forever to try and explain to her, and she still didn't get it in the end, that, there's a great big difference between the word crazy and mental illness. And you, by saying it's stigmatizing, make it so. You are cueing your patients to feel this way. And how did
yeah,
this come about? Because when you went to the lecture, you were cued in this by the lecturer.
yeah,
You guys are creating the stigma. It wasn't there automatically. Crazy's been a part of our language. You say, wow, that was a crazy weekend that we had. I went on this
yeah,
crazy road trip. And also, crazy is a very real word to describe behavior. There is
yes,
crazy behavior. I see it every day. That's
yeah.
not due to mental illness. The narcissist, classic ill, is a narcissist mentally ill? No,
I don't think so. No,
they can
but they
be.
class, yeah,
Right.
but they classify it as a mental illness.
Correct, but I understand. But I mean, technically, is there a brain deficiency in a function? No, it's
Yeah,
choice.
no,
So, are they? No, they do this out of choice. So I'm sorry, their behavior just falls under the heading of plain crazy, not necessarily mental illness. Yes, I would imagine there is some but it's not something that, you've got something wrong with your actual brain, which to me is more mental illness, or you've, come under some real severe, like PTSD, which is the result of, inappropriate negative emphasis, right? That's PTSD. It's really what it is. So
I
yes,
like
I would
that.
assume some
That's
narcissists, grew up in severe, um, 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 Hitler and Stalin and all that. They were abused by their fathers and beaten all the time and said, "You're not good enough. You're not good enough, and you got to be better," and all this stuff. So yes, I would assume they have a PTSD that is narcissistically related. Not, the
uh-huh.
typical PTSD is with, violence or stress or trauma, physical trauma rather than psychological trauma. But it's the same process, in other words, inappropriate
Right.
emphasis. So that leads to a mental illness, yes. But for the most part, most narcissists that I know, they know exactly what they're doing. And they know that it's a choice. They know they're lying. They know they're bullshitting. And they know they can do something about it, but they don't want to. Because to them, they then have to acknowledge the awful truth and start all over again and basically relearn life, because they skipped it all as a child. They were
Yes.
told, "You're wonderful, you're wonderful, you're wonderful." So they thought, "Well, I don't need to learn. I'm wonderful. I'm the king of the world." It's stuck in their brains. So that's correct. So they never learned basic things. It's fantastic. I mean, when you look at it, it's quite incredible.
There are a few who are actually, and I interviewed one, Leon Walker. He
I
is what?
That interview was a pretty good interview. That was a very good interview.
Yeah.
Actually.
He's he acknowledges, yep, I am a narcissist. I'm still a
Yeah,
narcissist, and I have to be very careful because I
exactly.
can find myself drawn into situations where I'm going to hurt someone again. Not going
Exactly.
to do that.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
Part of his management program is he knows he has to
Right.
stay
Right.
away from formal relationships,
Right. Now,
which,
now let's
God,
look at this.
what a lonely existence.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. But it's now. It doesn't mean it has to be forever, right? It's
Right,
now. So
right.
when we really understand this, right? And that's why I'm very happy with my understanding of psychology. I'll put my personal psychology that I've developed, I'll put it
Uh-huh.
next to any system, any psychology out there. It's very simple, really. Understanding attention, understanding habits, which is the same thing as attention, which is the same thing as emphasis. And, it's an entrenched habit, right? So
Okay.
this is why when we go back to way of applicability, you have clarity of intent. This is about relevance and pertinence. When you know what you're doing, you start noticing things that are relevant and pertinent because of attention. You're focusing attention on what you want, on what you intend, because it's really, really important. And then you start noticing the things that are relevant and pertinent. It's very simple, right? It
Okay.
changes your world. It's a very simple mechanism. Understanding humans is just to understand their motivations. But habit is a tricky one, because habit is a deliberate unawareness by design. Yes?
Okay, wait. What habit is what?
Habit is a deliberate unawareness by design.
Wow.
Yes, wow.
Honestly, I never would have defined it that way.
Yeah, it's
I
a
like
very
that.
powerful definition, but when you hear it, it's like, oh, yeah, well, duh, right?
Well, that's true, but
Yeah,
habit
yeah,
is a
yeah.
deliberate unawareness by design.
By design, exactly. So this is why we have to truly pay attention to habits. Now, so in paying attention to habits and also paying attention to basic premises, which is also another really, really critically important thing. So in psychology, we need to be absolutely a bit of a scientist, right? So for instance, I'm looking at a chain of logic chain, right? An implication chain, a logic chain, a conclusion chain. In other words, step one leads to. So I'm getting to the end of the chain, and typically when we come to things in life, let's say the chain is 100 steps long, but we don't
Okay.
always see the entire chain. Typically, we only see the last part of it. So we look at the last 10 steps, and we say, wow, from step 90 to 91, we don't know the numbers. We just say, wherever we come into it, oh, well, and the step leads the next step. Well, that's pretty logical. And then, so we For us, in our psychology, we think it's a 10-step chain, but actually it's the tail end of a 100-step chain. But now, 90 goes to 91 and it's all logical, and therefore we say step 100. Well, okay, this makes sense. It must be, it's valid because, well, all the steps follow logically. But if we go all the way back, that could very well, regardless of 90 to 91 being logical and each step there on being logical, one leading to the other, it could still be based on a false basic premise, which invalidates the entire chain. So we have to go back all the way to that basic premise. It's very important. And this is the problem with narcissism, right? The assumption of the basic premise of superiority. So, in other words, if you accept this basic premise as being valid, then all the things that follow from it, like bullying people, putting them down, pushing yourself up, all of this, it all makes sense. It's all logical relative to the basic premise. Let me repeat that. It's all logical relative to the basic premise. Logic is something that is a relative issue.
Okay. It's all logical.
Relative to the basic premise, always. Yeah. So if your basic premise, it's always your basic premise is something that you choose to believe, essentially.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Or, I guess you could start with the basic premise that it's a commonly accepted fact, but it's commonly accepted. We say the sky is blue, but that's just because our eyes interpret it that way. There are literally people who, when they look up at the sky, to them, what they would see it as green because their eyes see blue and green inverted. Yeah.
Right.
So when they get to a traffic light, they see blue at the bottom. It's fascinating.
Okay.
Yeah, colorblindness is very common. So it's not that uncommon actually, but because to them, in other words, the word green means blue to them, and vice versa. So it's fascinating, when we understand that even words and labels are subjective, and to be very careful. In other words, yeah. So, but when you realize this, we have to be very careful, and at the end of the day, we have to say, hey, wait a second. I'm not going to do this because it's logically sensible. Maybe, yes, I would like to, but there's a bigger criteria. I'm going to do it because it works for me. Whether it's logical or not makes very little difference because, hey, even if every single step in the chain is logical, it's still based on a basic premise, which is at bottom line, it's a choice, it's a belief. Yes, it may be a fact, but even facts are a bit variable, right? So, what's more important than it being accurate and logical is it valuable and useful?
Okay.
That trumps whether it's logical or not. I don't care if it's illogical. It's working for me. It's getting me benefit. There you go.
Is it valuable or useful? Okay. That one is true.
That's, all of Way of Impeccability is premised on valuable and useful in the context of application. Yeah. Not in the context of, it's valuable because I know it makes me look smart. That's not valuable and useful.
No.
It is to a narcissist, yes. But so, in the context of application. Yeah. And also, it's only valuable and useful as long as it lasts. So yes, I use a technique and, I'm using a screwdriver and somebody comes along with a drill with a screwdriver bit in it. Well, bye-bye, screwdriver.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, but I don't throw it away completely. Your inner bureaucrat says, because they know that they understand that sometimes you don't have electricity and you need the manual screwdriver, right? So the brain never throws away any tool. Yeah. Okay, the tool was bullying. Well, sometimes bullying is needed. It was murder. Sometimes murder is needed. No tool is ever thrown away because it works in its particular context. Our inner bureaucrats understand appropriateness appropriately.
Oh.
They really, really understand appropriateness, right? So when appropriate, you use the tool. It's as simple as that. Why throw it away? Makes no sense.
So in many ways, though, even though our ego might be overinflated, it's still useful.
Of course, it's massively useful. My ego gets me to do all sorts of stuff which I otherwise wouldn't be motivated to do. And without the sense of ego is essentially, you could take all the little parts of you, right? And they could be floating around. And it's like the magnetic force that pulls them all together, or the gravity force that
Yeah.
combines all the different little aspects of you into a cohesional unit, right? So if I didn't have an ego, I wouldn't bother to even eat or protect myself or do anything. I'd just be this
Right.
blob of nothingness. So ego keeps you together. Yeah, ego is a tool again. I use my
There
ego
you
to
go.
motivate me. So let's say my ego says, you know what? My ego wants to be special. Well, how can I be special? By being humble and modest.
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay, but the ego, it's a tool. It's a computer program. It doesn't see the inherent contradiction of that, right? It doesn't care.
No.
Okay, I'm going to be humble and modest, and that's why I'm going to be special. Yeah, fantastic. I'm leveraging my ego to get what I want, right?
It's
So
like
yeah,
a,
ego is a fantastic tool. You can
I'm
use
gonna
it to
say
do
it's kind of a whole nother part of us. It's a mystery, isn't it?
exactly, exactly. But it's just that part of you that is your identity. And if you
Yeah.
don't actually put value on your identity, then what? So they say self-worth. Now, what's the difference between self-worth and ego? Back in the day, before ego became narcissism, associated. Now you've got
Yeah.
narcissism, and ego's not so bad anymore. But back in the day when it first came up, when you were considered egotistical, wow, this was the worst thing ever. It was the same as being a narcissist. It's just relative terminology. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when you overdo it, say, yes, I need to have self-worth, but I need to be accurate, and my self-worth can't be at the expense of others. And also ego and narcissism overinflates your self-worth, which that gets you into trouble all the time. In the course, there's a section about narcissists who seek power. And when a new thing comes up, they will promote themselves and says, yes, I'll take this job, I can do it. And they make out like they have all the experience and can do it and everything. And because nobody else really wants to do it, they take charge. And then you get these disasters of idiots being in charge. It's astonishing.
Oh.
Simply because nobody else wants to do it. And they push themselves, and nobody can really counter it and say no, because they don't really know. In disasters, by the way, if ever you are in a disaster, and I hope not, and again, so you have to be very careful with the emphasis here. But let's just say, it could be some small, minor little thing, in the neighborhood. I don't know.
Hmm.
All the fences get blown over or whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying, just some trivial thing. But in a disaster situation and a chaos situation, watch out for narcissists taking charge. Yeah,
Oh. Yeah. I
because
could
they
see
do.
that.
Because now, when there's chaos, right, everybody's equal.
Yep.
Right, so
Yep.
anybody can take charge. It's the one who actually just acts first, usually, that says, okay, come do this, do that. Somebody who just assumes that mantle of taking charge. So in
Right.
that situation, be very understanding that you might not want to do it, but you absolutely do not want a narcissist to do it. So jump in before they do. If you see a narcissist that's around and you're aware of a narcissist, like, you got some, like in the neighborhood, and you know who the people are, you jump in first before they can. Yeah, it's very important. You can
Oh.
always transfer being in charge, the position of, that leadership position, to somebody else later on. But first grab it, and you can always transfer it to somebody appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or share it, or say, hey, you know what, I need help with this. This is not really my forte. I don't understand about plumbing, and yeah, plumbing is all shot in the neighborhood or whatever. You know what I mean? But you can then delegate and shit. But you have to do this, because the narcissist will grab at that opportunity. They will grab at it. Look at the
Yeah.
Russian oligarchs.
At the Russian
Read
what?
up on the Russian oligarchs. This is exactly how they came into power. When,
Yeah.
after the collapse of Russia, it was all chaos. They just took over. Thuggery and this bullying. I mean, the classic example is, I forget his name now, but the guy with the aluminium took over the largest aluminium factory, I believe, in the world. It was at the time, huge aluminium processing plant. And it was just chaos. There was no leadership. All the people had gone. And even his thugs, he was just a supervisor on the floor, foreman. And he just had his thugs, and he started to take control. And eventually he just claimed the company as his own. Isn't that incredible? He just said, well, it's mine
Wow.
now. That's it. And he owns it, and he still owns it. He
Oh,
just
be
claimed it out
darned.
of the chaos. Exactly, exactly, exactly. And who's to argue with him? He's in control of this thing. Nobody can say boo or bar, because, well, if they do, then they've got to actually have a physical fight, and all the struggle and stuff. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Yeah, so fascinating. And he
I'll
was
be
an old
darned.
one. Exactly. So there is a section in the course in the book about this. It's called chaos profiteers.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
narcissists are extreme chaos profiteers because they know in chaos anybody can claim to be in charge because nobody knows what's going on. It's chaos. Everybody's equal in chaos. In other words, right? There's no
Yeah.
hierarchy. So the first mover establishes the hierarchy, which is
Right.
exactly what those guys did. And now everybody accepts it because they buy into this whole superiority paradigm and hierarchy. Well, you're in charge, so okay. Therefore, I guess it makes sense that it's yours.
Oh.
Yeah, it's
So
astonishing. It's astonishing. Yeah, people just accept it. It's fascinating.
I'm trying to figure out what the mindset or the thinking process is for people in general in this that I've been noticing. It's not a statement of fact, but I'm saying I'm noticing this. They act and speak as though narcissism is, by far worse than sexual abuse or physical abuse.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I understand that psychological damage is difficult. I mean, I've experienced narcissism. I really have.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
But I'm telling you what, I mean,
Just
I'm
sure,
just
don't separate
wondering.
it out. Put it under part of the same spectrum. So physical sexual abuses are all narcissists in some way or another, likely.
Exactly.
It's
But
all part of the
that's where
same thing.
they
It's
keep
not
forgetting.
separate. I mean, it's part of the superiority paradigm, so part of
Yes.
dominance, right? So
Yes.
yes, I very much, as soon as we finished with this particular course, do the PSP. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, and that's just because that's where I feel like I really feel as though I need more understanding to develop that message of this
yeah, yeah.
this starts here.
Yeah,
This is where this starts.
it's
Clear
very
back in
important.
childhood.
Yeah.
Um,
It's interesting to me when I first did it, I wasn't particularly keen on it. But I did it, so because it was Olivia's passion and she was
right.
posting about it and going through it, and she'd come to me and we discussed it and dissected, and we'd had Zoom sessions, but in person, essentially,
Right.
right? The same thing. She was dealing with this, and I elaborated because I really understood this, and she didn't. It wasn't part of her psychology or awareness at all. It was like a big surprise to her that people could be this way in essence, right?
Right.
I
Right.
was really kind of blew her away. So I wasn't very keen to focus on it, but she was so passionate on saying, look, I dealt with it because I have other tools that I can do. My own sense of self-worth, just for one, allowed me not to get annihilated by this BMN. And he was a bit of a wimpy BMN. He wasn't a physical bully, just a psychological BMN. So she dealt with him, no problem. But she said she wanted to pass it on to other people, to other women, especially. So okay,
Yes.
so then I, took her posts, and about 60% of the quotes in the course of the book are her posts. I made up new ones
Right.
also as
Right.
appropriate as I elaborated on the topic in general, and then I took that as the theme to use it as elaboration because her quotes were a takeaway of our discussions, right?
Right.
So
Right.
so but still, I wasn't very keen to get into this, but I'm glad I did because it's very valuable. Like with
Yeah.
Erica, I mean, Erica, this understanding of PSP has been just incredibly transformative for Erica. Now, you wouldn't say Erica, yes, she had experience with the BMN. Everybody does at some point, her stepfather was a BMN and all this, but she was a teenager at the time. So it wasn't the direct issue. Yes, he tried to bully and control and do all this nonsense, but it wasn't majorly, really, truly in the sense of major trauma. Yes, it was, but not in the, typical sense. But
Right.
it's subtle, the effect of it, and just her ability to understand the world and the universe and everything in it. This was just very powerful and useful to her. So
Yeah.
this understanding of it, it's like, hey, everything makes sense now, and this was
Well,
huge.
see, and I think it's important that I do understand as much as I possibly can about it.
Critical.
I
It's critical. It's critical.
Yeah,
It's
and
critical
that's because
because it's peace.
Well, I mean, and it's helping me make sense of things that just didn't make sense. It's helping me make
Yeah,
sense of, like, say, even the whole
exactly.
effort reward system that Larry and I had set up
Exactly.
between
It
us.
does.
You
Exactly.
know, um, I
Exactly.
don't know. I mean, I
Exactly.
know
Exactly.
somewhere
It
along the
does.
line
It
he
does.
had to have had. Um, I know he had some mental illness, but it doesn't mean that, that doesn't make
Who's
him a
this
bad
now?
person. Larry, it doesn't make him a bad person
Oh,
that
oh,
he
Larry.
struggled
Yeah.
with mental
Yeah.
illness.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely not.
but
Absolutely not. Exactly.
we had a
Yeah.
system, an unspoken of system of effort reward set up between the two of us.
Excellent. Excellent.
He was terrified of being codependent or of being married
Yeah.
to somebody who was codependent, but we both were.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
We,
It's sometimes the things that you're terrified of because of emphasis and attention. We
yeah,
have to pay attention to attention itself. It is
yeah.
it is a ridiculously powerful force.
Well, see, his
It is
mother,
emphasis.
eh,
Attention is emphasis.
yeah, his
So when
mom,
you start paying attention to things like what you're afraid of, you tend to bring it into your life. Yeah.
right.
Quite sad.
Well, just briefly, his mom, he had a very strained relationship with her. He loved her, but he was still very distant and always trying to fight to gain his autonomy from her because she was very
Oh, interesting.
codependent and enmeshed with him, and that was obvious and it was scary. It was very sad to watch, but he would fight a lot, his mom would call and he would just ignore the call and he's like, I can't deal with her right now. She's
Interesting.
already called 5 times this week. I don't need to talk with her.
Interesting.
um yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
something. It
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, we had quite an interest, and it's helping me understand the
Yes.
dynamics of our relationship. It's also
Yes.
it helped me understand when that woman contacted me, claiming to be his daughter.
Yeah.
Um, I was able to just say, well, okay, there's not a whole lot I can offer you, but I'm sorry, And she never has contacted me again, which was good,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But
she
she got
came
the
in,
thing
asked her
did,
questions, and
hopefully.
left. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but it
Very
was just one
interesting.
of those
Very
things. It's like I could have focused emphasis on that, but it's helping me make sense. Understanding a lot of this is helping me make sense of why maybe why anyways, or what caused my father to do what he did, my mother to do what she did, any of these people in my life.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's helping to make sense of it. So then I don't feel like,
Yeah.
I don't like this term, but it's
Yeah.
helped me feel like I was never crazy.
Exactly. Exactly. And to understand the brain, that
Yeah,
the brain can wiring. It's just like a computer. I mean,
yeah,
if you have something where the wires get a little bit short circuited, and you believe something and it's an untruth, but that basic premise, and it starts feeding on itself, you get a brain that's trained in a peculiar way. So
yeah,
it's very helpful to understand that. So it's also very useful to understand that when you look at why it's not always reasonable or logical, right? So we have to understand the why is, well, why did it happen? Because of a random short circuit in the brain. See what I mean?
yeah,
So we have to look at some point, we have to accept the why is that it came about because of a random irregularity, a random anomaly, a peculiarity. Who knows? So, and this is what I have to accept. If we always trying to look for a why that makes sense, we are going to be disappointed. Yeah,
yeah,
it's very important to understand. Very important. All right. So understanding the superiority paradigm. It is not understanding superiority, it is understanding the superiority paradigm, right? It's the psychology of the superiority paradigm. It's a paradigm. In other words, a paradigm means it's pervasive. Yeah. It's pretty
okay,
much almost everywhere, right? That's what a paradigm is, something that's almost everywhere. Not 100%, but pretty much, right?
okay,
It's the overwhelmingly majority, majorly used or implemented or accepted or whatever. That's what makes it a paradigm. It's
Okay.
predominant. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now let's think of our computer brain. And in the same way as with a tool, that it doesn't throw things away. But now you say, well, wait a second, brain. You know what? This is paradigm and it sucks. And I want to change, I need to replace it. Obviously, I don't care for this paradigm. I don't want to live according to this paradigm. I want to use it. But the brain says, I cannot throw it away until I have a replacement. And the only way I can really get to really understand replacement is to say, I can't throw away something that's useful until I fully understand that it is actually not.
Okay. Say that
So,
again.
so I can't really throw away this paradigm and shift out of it into replacement when
Okay.
I'm not convinced that it is actually a negative, because it's a paradigm, right? So your brain, it's part of our brain is hardwired to accept things are true because everybody says so.
Okay.
Right? And how did this come about? Things like walking on the ice, right? Your mother says, don't go on the ice, don't, you'll fall through the ice. Well, that could be true, but I say, Mom, everybody's out on the ice and walking around, skating and all this. If everybody's doing it, it must be safe. It must be okay. Right? It must be true. This is very much part of our DNA because that's how we ate foods. Well, everybody's eating this berry, it must be safe. And it is so in general, right?
Right.
So it has a physical truth to it, but obviously not a psychological truth. It doesn't apply to morality, for instance. Yes?
Right.
Right. So when we understand this with the paradigm, it's hard for the brain to throw it out because, well, everybody's doing it. There must be some value to it. Yes, of course there's value to it, but value at what price? So this is why we want to understand the superiority paradigm so deeply that we can see that discernment, that layeredness, the deepness of why in the bigger picture it doesn't make sense, and why it's an impossibility of winning situation and circumstance, and why it's detrimental, despite the step 1 and step 2 says, wow, I'm getting benefit out of this, but step 3, step 4, step 10, you're getting real negative harm and detriment. So you have to understand it in full detail before your deeper psychology inner bureaucrats can let go of it completely and then shift to a replacement, right? We know we want to, but it's that deeper part of you that won't let go of it until it's convinced that it's crap. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right.
Also,
So
we have to understand, like with the ice. Yes, everybody's on it, it's safe. But also we have to understand the science of if you put too many people on it, the weight is going to crack and fall through. Yeah.
okay.
So this is the power of discernment. Yes. The primitive sort of idiot logic says, well, it must be safe. Everybody's on the ice. But no, too many people on the ice, you could be the last one that goes on and cracks the ice. You got to pay attention. In other words, can you hear cracking sounds and see cracks and all this?
Yeah. So that's why that's our need to make sense of things so that we can let stuff go.
Exactly. And in the case
sense
of
is understanding
paradigm, because it's so deeply entrenched into us, we not only have to sort of understand it more or less, we have to understand it to the extent where we understand why it cannot work. Not doesn't, but cannot as a paradigm, as a long-term thing. Yes.
Okay.
So we are looking at this as we are looking past its superficial benefits to its longer term, bigger picture overview, overall, say this is a system that cannot work. You're going to get caught up in this thing. It's essentially a porcupine trap.
Yeah, well, and we can sense
porcupine trap is, right?
No, but I was just going to say it makes sense to me because I see those situations where I don't want to, something sensibly, my senses will come to me and it's like, no, I don't want to get involved in that because that's not a place I want to be.
Right. So a porcupine trap is very simple. Yeah. You take chicken wire and you roll it into a long funnel. Yes. Nice big opening at the front.
Okay. Yeah? That makes sense.
And you put it in your fence, right? So you've got your garden on the one side and you put it there. So of course the porcupine wants to get into your garden, because they eat so it sees the opening and it goes in, right? And it goes in, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper in, but of course it's going one way. But when it realizes it's stuck, it's too late because now it can't. As it backs up, those quills get stuck in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They get stuck in
So
the chicken wire. It can't move.
exactly. Now, this is a very particularly apt analogy for the superiority paradigm because it's the prickliness of the porcupine which leads to its demise,
Okay.
right?
All
I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
quite literally, it's the spines, which is its prickliness. And
Yes.
psychologically, it's the same with the superiority paradigm. At first, it's very inviting. It's a big hole, and there's this promise of the garden on the other end. But the deeper you get into it, the more you get stuck into it, the more you get enmeshed in it. So now, what does the porcupine do when it's a narcissist? It cannot back up. It's stuck in this paradigm, right? So it tries to
Oh.
make out that this is the be all and end all of everything. It bullshits that it's not stuck. It tries to bullshit itself. It's not stuck. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But it is. It's been.
Of course it is. And it's not going anywhere. And it cannot. That funnel gets narrower and narrower. It's no possibility. It cannot get out of it. It cannot go through it either. There is no other end. Funnel goes
Oh.
nowhere. Yeah, it's fascinating. So it's very, very important. And it has to be gradual because obviously, if you go right quickly to a point, it can see it's close enough to see the endpoint as a block, right? So the funnel has to be gradual. That it appears to be, it's looking down. Oh, well, I can go there. I can go a little further. I can go there too. So
Right.
it's the trickiness of the superiority paradigm. It's gradual that it sucks you in because initially there are some rewards. You are apparently going somewhere, or so it seems. Yeah. There are benefits.
See, and I don't know. I get a little caught up too, especially about people stating that they are completely evil people. I just cannot subscribe to that.
Yeah. Again, pay attention to definitions. When they say they are completely evil people, right? A person is simply a sum total of their current behavior. So yes, their current behavior, if you define people as that, is completely evil, fine. But people are also capable of change, as we clearly have seen, right? So
Yes.
if you want to insist that narcissists are not capable of change, how do you know? It's an
Yeah.
absolute that they have no way of proving. So, okay, you believe that, fine. Okay, I have no way of saying it's not so, but you have no way of saying it is so. So anybody who insists on absolutes is just wasting their time.
Yeah. And a lot of times I just will pass on that, but
Exactly. When we start to look at things as functions of our subjective understanding of meaning, we assign meaning to words, and we
yes, we
believe
do.
we say this thing, but not necessarily. So when they say a human, do they mean the behavior? Do they mean the inherent biology, etc., etc.? Yeah. So.
Oh, they
So
I didn't,
let's put it this way, right? We know narcissists are capable of doing extraordinary things, when they're
yes,
motivated. Yeah.
yes.
So
Uh-huh.
okay. So I say to a narcissist, hey, I'm going to pay you $1 billion to not be a narcissist. Wow, fantastic, right?
Hmm.
And let's say they take on this challenge. It's $1 billion, and they get monitored by the psychologists and all this, right? And so they learn to behave because according to this is now the challenge to prove this to your person who says they're inhuman and they can't change, right? And
Right.
now let's say they are correct and they are actually impossible of changing. However, we know that a narcissist is capable of displaying behavior, right? That to serve its ends, correct?
Right.
That so it's capable of pretending, in other words, to be a genuine nice person. So for this $1 billion, this narcissist is absolutely impeccably scrupulous in being a good and nice person.
Oh,
Yeah. What do
okay.
I care what do I care if inside they are actually a narcissist pretending to be? Their behavior is nice. Everybody who meets them does it matter? No, it doesn't matter.
No, it
Because
doesn't
the
matter.
reality is that their behavior makes them nice. So who cares? Who cares if they incapable of change or they're actually inhuman and all this stuff? It doesn't matter. It's about the behavior. So all we got to do is find the appropriate motivation. Might not be $1 billion, but in the case of narcissism, it can be turned in on itself. Like I said, my ego can take pride in being modest and humble and noble, for instance. Turn
Right.
narcissists into this idea of, hey, you want to be the king of the world and be thought of and have the highest regard, be truly noble in your behavior. Wow, this is the way to really satisfy my narcissism. Okay. Leverage it, in other words. It's very simple. I don't understand why psychology doesn't click on this. It's like so right? But they
Well, I
don't.
would think so, but they don't,
Yeah, but they
you
don't.
know.
So this is my point. Stay away from psychology, or at least I used to read up. Obviously, I studied it when I was younger and read all the different stuff. But
Right.
I soon realized that, hey, dudes, you've got a very limited part of it, and so I just developed my own, and I went with usefulness and application, and specifically, honesty and what really, really works for me. And when you really think it through to the end, that's the problem. They didn't think things through to the end, which is really astonishing to me. This is truly transformative.
There's
Multiple
a lot.
perspective shifting and thinking things through to the end. Those two tools, which are so fundamental to way of impeccability and to
Yeah.
a psychology, are huge, and they just weren't prevalent. It just fascinated me. So, hey, you know what? I just got to accept that. All right, what I'm doing is something really wonderful.
Well, I look at, I was trying to figure out, it's like, how do they come up with these statements? How do they come up with the information on the DSM? Did they do it through
Yeah, yeah,
tests? Do they do it through blind group studies? And you've got your control and your blind group. How do they specifically come up with all of these disorders and diagnoses?
yeah, yeah. So,
And then how do they
the
come up
other
with the
problem,
labels?
right? So the labels are self-reinforcing
Yeah, they are. And I stay
because
away from
they're
those.
I understood attention when I was a kid. I watched it, I observed it, I understood it.
Yeah.
My example of the anger, for instance, incremental change, and that you can't go and say, well, I realize I've got an anger problem and I don't want to have it anymore. And now I say, well, I'm not angry anymore. It doesn't work. I don't have anger issues anymore. It doesn't work because it's a lie. And I worked that out and I figured it, and I actually helped somebody through incremental change to change from being an angry person.
Well,
So,
you helped me with that, that's for sure, because I was pretty pissed
but I
off.
mean, as a kid, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, as a
But
kid, that's
yeah,
cool.
I was just in my own bubble. I just understood it and said, okay, I didn't think I was anything or whatever. I just did it because it worked and I understood it to work. So, I was outside of that bubble of the psychology. Hey, this is my psychology, your psychology, and they compete against each other. And, none of that shit, sorry. I don't want
Yeah.
any.
Well, it's like CJ the other day, he knew when I wasn't feeling good. He knew I had a fever the other night and that I haven't been feeling my best. He's like, Grandma, the only thing you need right now is naps. He's like, you need more naps because you're not sleeping during the day. That's why you don't sleep at night. That's why you're struggling at night. You just need to rest.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, okay, that's pretty observant actually, because there's probably a lot of truth to that. I probably do need those little mini power naps today because 2-3 nights in a row now, I have not slept well at all.
Exactly. And that's why I like, impeccability, because impeccability is best use of energy. Well, there's implications to that. How can I make best use of my energy if I don't have energy in the first place?
Right.
Yeah. So,
and I don't have very good energy lately. It's been even today, I am struggling today, and there's no reason for it.
Clients, whenever they got a problem, just take your very first thing and say, hey, where's your energy at? Right.
Exactly.
And inevitably, you will, find when you're dealing with people that were having problems that they're low energy.
See, and I just did a video on that yesterday because I wrote a little blurb about it. I was thinking about it, and it just dawned on me. It's like, I need to check my energy. It's not medical. I need to check my physical energy. What is going on?
Exactly.
So I was kind of writing out some questions. It's like, what's happened? Peel it back. What changed? What shifted? What's different in my environment? And what have I induced? What am I placing emphasis on?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, I was so focused on feeling icky that I was feeling icky.
Exactly.
I hope that makes sense.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So let's look at also, since we just having this great discussion on psychology today,
Yeah.
on the brains, right? So first of all, we don't have a brain.
No, we have 2 or 3.
5, 6, 10, 8. I don't know. We got a whole bunch of them. It's more. I mean, well, you've got the you got the frontal cortex, you got the neocortex, you got the hippocampus, you got the left brain, you got the right brain, you got the brainstem. I don't know how many is that already. Anyway, when you
Yeah.
observe people, and especially if you observe yourself, and this is really where my psychology comes from, this intense, honest observation of myself, right? So when
Uh-huh.
you start to observe, and because my study of psychology was in the context of awareness, right? That was my very first start, was really understanding what is awareness, how does awareness work. So you very soon start to understand, oh my God, I was so horrified when I started to pay attention to my own awareness at how unaware and in bubbles I was, right?
Uh-huh.
So I said, wait a second, I'm not stupid, but how come I'm doing stupid things? What's the answer? Well, because you get caught up in the moment, you get caught up in ideas, you get caught up in other words, bubbles, right? Awareness bubbles,
Right.
in subsets of awareness. So when we understand this changes everything. And then I started to really, when you go into that too, you start to become aware that you have psychologies that help you in this bubble. For instance, when you get caught up in anger, you're getting caught up in your anger psychology or stubbornness. And when you think this through, we understand, wow, you know what, at some point when I was a 2-year-old and I was stubborn about everything, it really worked for me. It was a fantastic way of being, right? So I'm starting to develop my personality, and I see, wow, stubbornness really works. This is fantastic. But as I get a little older, of course, it doesn't work. I said, well, it worked for a while, but doesn't work anymore. I need something new. So I discard stubbornness, and I move on to the next thing, right? But because the brain doesn't throw away things that worked in particular circumstances, and even as adults, sometimes we're not being stubborn but complaining, it really works for you. So we keep it, right? And that's where aspects come from. They are trial psychologies that worked for a while, and they got developed past just the idea of it, so they got fleshed out a little bit, but were then abandoned, right? So they're unfinished software, you could say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why they still exist as aspects. They have their own life to them, and managing our aspects is very important. It's very powerful, very useful as well to understand that. So when we look at our psychology and we understand, hey, I is more than one, this really, really, really helps tremendously. Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It
It's a
absolutely does. Now,
very, very
can all those eyes, will they understand as I begin to dismantle and make sense of things? Will they be understanding at the same time, or is our parts just going to come at
Well,
different
it's like a
times?
computer, right? So think of it as software in your computer. You've got your operating system, and then
Right.
you've got programs that you run on top of the operating system, right? So I run my
Right.
accountancy program or whatever. Now,
Right.
some of those programs, like my accountancy program, Mr. A, I call him, Mr. Anal, but Mr. A, yeah? Because he's also a really great accountant. He's a good organizer. He's good at keeping track of things. I
Okay.
love my Mr. A. But if I give my Mr. A too much leeway and I let him kind of run away with himself, you end up OCD. Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's you have to understand that they are limited psychologies. They work in their field, but they don't work outside of their field. Right. So we've seen this
Okay.
literally with the accountant mindset. Yeah. With people who are
Okay.
very, very anal, very tight. In their field, it's fantastic. As an accountant, you're a genius. But you can't take your that psychology that helps you as an accountant and use it in normal everyday living, right? It makes you a total pain in the ass. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So
Yes.
this is important to understand. Again, it's about appropriateness. Your anus is appropriate. Well, I meant A-NESS. It just came out kind of nice, right? I think you heard me say anus, not
Yeah,
anus.
but that's funny.
But anyway, yeah, just as I said it, I'm like, wow.
But
so,
that's okay.
so
That works too.
it's totally appropriate. Exactly. So when we understand it's contextually appropriate, this is where we shift. When the concept of context came to me when I was a kid, it was a visual thing. It was almost a spiritual experience, right?
Hmm.
Context. It was huge. It was really huge deal to understand the power and value of context. So when we understand our psychology is contextual, that everything changes, right? So Mr.
Yeah.
A, Mr. Stubborn, Mr. Pride, all of them, they are fantastic in their bubble contexts. Yes. But the
Yeah.
moment we understand that they are only valuable in their context, everything changes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
then I can get to leverage them. I can say, hey, you know what? Mr. A is very good at being organized. Let me use him in the context of, say, organizing something outside of his thing or whatever. Or Mr. Stubborn, I can take stubborn pride, for instance, in not being egotistical. Now I've turned
Okay.
stubbornness and pride into something valuable, right? So I can leverage them. It's just how you use them. When you understand them as tools and you use them appropriately, it's fantastic. Yeah.
My stubbornness actually is what helps me be persistent in application.
There you go. Exactly.
It absolutely does.
Leverage them. So they're very potent, these tools, but you have to use them appropriately. And you have
Yeah.
to give them, they if you don't use them, they're going to start pressing on you to use them.
Yeah.
They want to be used. They don't want to be neglected. So they start pressing on you and you feel that pressure. So we have to manage our aspects. It's very important.
Mm.
Very, very important. Yeah. Very powerful
So,
also.
well, and then on the same topic and token, I was very pleased with myself for not letting it get under my skin that somebody may or may not have said, negative things about me, that I was trying to be somebody I'm not. I could have let that get under me and I could have asked this person, well, who was it? What did they say? Gosh, that's horrible. But I didn't.
Exactly.
I thought about it for a second and it's like, no, that's not me. I don't need
Exactly.
to know.
And exactly. And if they did say it and did mean it, so what? At some point, the more followers you get, the greater the likelihood that somebody is going to want to be negative for no
Yeah.
other reason than you are exposing through your sharing of moreness, you are exposing their lessons, right? So I call it
Yeah.
mentality of opposites. Very important to understand. It's a very big part of the
See, just a
superiority
minute.
paradigm.
CJ, what's going on? All right. Sorry. Anytime I hear a kid yell no and then start to fake cry, I'm like, all right, what's going on? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Didn't mean to interrupt. Okay, continue, please.
right. So mentality of opposites, with the dashes, capitals, put it in your dictionary of power. Very important understanding, right? This mentality of opposites. It's a huge, huge, huge deal. And it affects so much. Mentality of opposites says if something is not, then it's its opposite. Yeah.
Okay.
So in other words, if something's not black, it automatically makes it white. If something is not good, it automatically makes it bad, right? So I look as, a narcissist or anybody comes along and they have this mentality, right? So according to them, they are good and wonderful, which is why typically narcissists are also racists, yes? Because they see something that's dissimilar to them, that's different, and they say,
Okay.
well, it's not similar to me, I'm good, therefore you must be bad.
Okay.
That's it. This is a really idiotic, stupid psychology. Of course, it doesn't take into account of difference, right? And for instance, if it's not black, it must be white. No, that's not true. You can actually literally ask this question to people. If something is not white, what color is it? So, well, black, but typically, if they, like me, when I ask the question, most people who know me already say, well, there must be a trick question, and they start thinking. So, and the answer is, well, it could be any color. And
Yeah.
actually, the technical answer to that is neither black nor white are actually colors. White is all colors and black is no colors. So, but still, the point is made that we are so caught up in this either or mindset that we forget difference and we forget variety and we forget color. So in color, there's no opposites in color, right?
Right.
This whole mindset
Right.
just goes away. Yes, sometimes things are either or, but only sometimes, not always, not even mostly. So this is a very, very powerful understanding, but it limits people's psychology and they get stuck in this, particularly the narcissists, right? So to get back to the people who want to criticize you, if I'm stuck in the mentality of opposites and Sher comes along and she's sharing her stuff and hey, I'm learning, I'm growing, I've got moreness going on, I'm developing, and you elucidate why. Well, fuck, and now you've just made me into crap by comparison, right? So of course they
Oh,
don't want to handle this. They don't like this reality. So they're going to try and pull you down in order to push themselves up. They're going to try and prove you wrong. They're going to say you crap. Why? Because they don't want to face the awful truth that, well, yeah, you need to learn and grow. You are full of shit. Sorry. Yeah.
so
So they want to face
this
that
is
awful truth. So they try and, change that seesaw, that ratio of, hey, if you're good, that means I'm bad. They can't
uh
see you as color. Yeah.
okay. I was gonna
Yeah.
say it's is it a
Yeah.
I thought it was a good thing that I share my growth, but
Oh, it's
probably not
very good.
everybody sees it
Very
that
good.
way.
Yeah, but for some, it's not going to work because they stuck in the mentality of opposites. They cannot see the world in any other way but as opposites. So if they see you as good, that means they are by default automatically bad. And they can't be bad, so well, I'm good. That means you have to be bad, and therefore they have to pull you down and prove you're bad. They're stuck in the psychology. It's very, very important to truly, truly understand this mentality of opposites
Okay.
because it will
Okay.
lead to people doing this when they kind of know they're not, but they don't want to accept the awful truth that, and they're just stuck in this. They can't understand that hey, you can be colors. They say, and all you're doing is saying, hey, this is me in my particular color configuration.
And the mentality of opposites actually that does when they're stuck, it does explain their anger. They're not being able to move beyond a specific point, right? Okay.
Exactly. And
That makes
also,
sense.
part of it is the refusal to face and deal with the awful truth. Like
Okay.
I've said this many, many times. The one thing I regularly see where people get stuck in change, in development, in growth, in improvement is because they refuse to face and deal with the awful truth. That's the blockage point.
Face and deal with the awful truth. Okay.
If you cannot do that, forget it. You are going to get stuck and you're not going to progress. You have to. You have to at some point, right? Now, the awful truth, of course, sometimes is purely subjective, right? And once you
Yeah.
do face and deal with it, it transforms into the awesome truth because you learn and you grow. This
Yes.
awesome truthness is just an idea to ego. But when you unhook from ego and the superiority paradigm, it just stops being an issue, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
so
it's important to
okay.
understand.
I'm getting it. I'm getting it because I'm thinking about, the mentality of I'm going to go back to that community again, the NARC community that follows that promoter.
Yeah.
Their mentality is narcissists are evil. They're inhuman. They'll never change. We're angry about it. And we want everybody to know how angry we are. And these are the things that we experienced. But nobody wants to talk about how to grow beyond those experiences. None of that's talked about. And so here I come, they invited me to come speak about, well, how do you grow beyond those experiences? Like, nope, can't understand you. It's not making sense to us. It doesn't make any sense at all. So, except for one, no, two gals, both girls bought my book. They've been reading it. They understand the process. One of them was very curious about you. I don't know if she's followed your community yet or not. But that I see what you're saying because they are definitely stuck where they don't want to see the awful truth
Exactly.
of they are stuck.
Exactly. So if you get an opportunity to go back to that group, give us a talk about color. Yes, and how we
Okay.
are all paintings of color. And objectively, there is no good or bad paintings. It's all eye of the beholder, right? Beauty
Yeah.
is in the eye. So I can't say objectively something is better or not. I am my group of colors. That's it. You can't say one color is better than another. It's idiotic. Yeah.
I get that all the
I'm just
time. And
different.
that's the point. That's honestly, Sil, that's what kind of pushed me away from the community was hearing repeatedly how, you know, narcissism is the worst abuse and the worst. It might feel like it to you,
Yeah.
especially
Because
if
they're
you haven't
stuck in the
experienced.
superiority paradigm, which
There
is
you go.
all about hierarchy. So in
Yeah.
their brain, they're still following this idea that you've got to be better. And better usually is more.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
very primitive psychology, in other words. So they're trying to be good in an inappropriate way. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So look at how we understand the real root underlying psychology. They're trying to be better by being more worse.
Uh-huh. Okay. There it is right there.
Yeah. So it's
That's
still
it.
part of the superiority paradigm. That's why understanding the superiority, truly understanding it to the point of expertise is so critically important. In that context with that group, you were wasting your time,
Yes.
right? Because the
Absolutely.
real discussion needs to be on understanding the superiority paradigm.
Yeah.
Once
And
they
it was
get this,
triggering me.
now I get it. I'm trying to be good by applying a hierarchy in a bad way. A
Yeah.
hierarchy, it's a terrible nonsense. It's a no-win psychology. Sorry. Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out
False.
why it was triggering me. Why it was,
Yeah.
it's like this, why am I letting this affect me? Now I understand.
Exactly.
Now I
Exactly.
understand it. So there was it, I was choosing, of course, to let it affect me. But because I wasn't able to make sense of it yet. Yeah. So you're right. I do need to understand it to the level of experience.
Critical. It's
Expertise.
very critical. It's absolutely essentially critical.
Yeah, it is.
You not just understand the superiority paradigm, but be expert. We
Yes.
have to understanding is one thing. An expert means you can use it, you can apply it, you can share it, you can discuss it, you can talk about it, you can explain it. Yes.
Yes.
This is, we need to know, not for the purposes of being able to explain it, but when you are able to explain it, it means you really know it. When you really know it and you understand it so fully that you understand, because it's complex and initially it seems good, to understand that in the end it cannot work. It's
Right.
it's an imploding circumstance. It's an imploding psychology. It's an imploding paradigm. It will collapse in on itself eventually, but it appears to work, and this is what keeps it alive. So in
Yeah.
order to let go of it, that's why it's so important. Psychologically, internally, inside us, we won't absolutely be able to let go of it until we really know
CJ.
it's crap. Yeah.
Close your window, please. I'm going to turn on the air conditioner. Close your window, please. Wow. Fallen. We have to turn on the AC, so
Wow.
it's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you get that there in Arizona too, don't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, totally. It's cold in the morning and then it comes midday and it gets hot, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you have to turn it on. And that's kind of what it's been like the last couple of days. We've been suffering through it, but it's like today, no, it's going to be 84, which isn't bad, but it's still not very comfortable when it's 84 with humidity.
What can you do? You have to adapt as appropriate. That's why I love appropriateness so much, right? So the other thing that I'm sharing too, right?
Yes.
As we go through this, we see how all the various different elements, when you get deeper, how much they really start to work together and collaborate, and they are connected, right?
Everything of it, every bit of it is.
Exactly. And it's very important to really get to that point of the deeperness to see that connectivity, because then we can really use it. And this is potent. This is potent to really use.
I find it interesting that some of these applications that I'm actually just now starting to pay attention to, see the value of. I understood the value of being mindful of my movements, but not to the point where I am now. I am very aware of, I've got I don't know, whatever, anytime I get stressed, my joints will flare up and they hurt, all of them.
Interesting.
Um,
Interesting.
the doctors would call it, I've been told I have RA. Doctors will say, oh, it's a flare up.
Yeah.
Well, to me, I'm
It's
not paying
energy and
attention. Yeah,
emphasis.
exactly. I am
Yeah.
not paying
Yeah.
attention to my energy and where I'm placing it.
Yeah.
So, or releasing it. So I
Exactly.
start feeling those aches and pains. And
Exactly.
that's why I said I'm moving
Exactly.
deliberately slow.
Exactly. See, it all comes back down to energy usage, which is
Uh-huh.
why my core is called way of impeccability. It all comes down to energy usage. So if you don't have energy in the first place, you can't use it appropriately. You have to have the
No,
energy. So it's very
no.
important. And then, how you use the energy, of course, attention, emphasis, all of the stuff, it becomes critical. Yes. It's very important.
Yes. So try to figure out where my brain was last year when I was going through a lot of this stuff, and it was clicking, but it wasn't.
It doesn't matter, Sher. It doesn't matter. That was then, this is now.
Yeah.
This, what you're experiencing, like, oh my God, I'm kind of starting all over again. It is part of the process. I feel this almost every day. So just
Okay.
do it. That's the magic of it. We are going to do this over and over. And each time you come back at it with fresh eyes, with fresh awareness, with fresh understanding, with fresh depth, with a deeper connectivity, because it's a lot. It is a massively complex situation, even
Yes,
though
it is.
it's simple when you understand it. But to live it, to apply it, to become it, we have to go over and over to change the deep habit of an entire lifetime of brain training. We not only have to overcome our lifetime, but we have to overcome everybody's lifetime.
Yes. That's the thing.
We
Oh,
are
let me.
against
Oh,
the paradigm, which means that we have to really, really have this stuff truly mastered, because that paradigm affects us every single day in every single way. And it's in our DNA too. So we are looking to change our DNA, which takes a very big deal. Your DNA isn't going to change lightly. It has to be absolutely convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's
yeah.
why we have to have a complete wizardry and mastery and expertise in this, right? Where it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Then
because it's not going to change. I won't have anything to replace it with.
exactly.
Nothing is going to change. If
Exactly.
it's
And you won't be able to throw it away unless
no,
it's conclusively proven to be detrimental.
exactly.
Conclusively proven to be detrimental. Yeah.
So
Otherwise, you
all
won't
parts of
throw it
me
away.
pretty much have to be in agreement that, yep, this is not
Right.
helpful to us. And so we can
Right.
get rid of this.
Right. So we can have the replacement, but it's always going to linger with that, yeah, but, right?
Uh-huh.
You need to be able to answer those yeah buts, because it's like kids, right? You say to them, don't do it, because you know the deepness, beyond the obvious, to say, well, I don't know, whatever, a surface child thing that they do.
Yeah.
You see the consequence, the moreness of it. And then they say, yeah, but it's working. I'm getting the value out of it. And they don't see the step 2, step 3, step 4, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, they
So we
don't.
have to go, and some of these are, not just 3, 4 steps, they 10, 20, 100 steps, so we have to really be expert so that we can answer those yeah buts, and that the part that says yeah but has become convinced. Yeah. So that
Okay.
child, you explain to them, and again, from children, if you explain to them and in their mind there's still a yeah but, you haven't done anything. No matter how much they're nodding and saying yes, okay, until they are themselves changing the yeah but, the
Uh-huh.
objection, right? Their behavior won't change, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got that
So
the other day from
we have,
CJ.
we have many children inside us, all those aspects. So we have to explain to them to a point where they, yeah, dang it, I get it. And also, sometimes they get it, but still, and they go back to in the bubble, and they want the initial benefits. So they have to really have that in the forefront of the longer term detriments. And that's a hard part to shift out of, short term
Right.
versus long term. So our impeccability says, hey, we are looking at overall long term life benefits, life change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So we have to change that.
absolutely.
We have to change that psychology of short term versus longer term. You can look this up. There are many experiments and studies on this, right? I remember seeing the one particular one that I saw was they put kids in the room and they put a sweet in front of them and said, you can eat the sweet now, or, we'll come back in 5 minutes and you'll have 2 or 3 sweets or whatever it was, more sweets, right?
Yeah.
And this is a very famous study. And I would really recommend you look it up and show it to CJ, right?
Okay.
Now, the study, they took those kids and followed them for like 25 years or whatever, right? It was a very long-term study. And then they said, well, how did these kids turn out later in life? And the ones who were able to defer and wait for the benefit, they all turned out to be more successful than the ones who did it, right? I mean, it's very clear. Yeah. And there's many long-term studies on this. Some of them may even be longer than 25 years now, but it's well worth showing him and then showing him the results for him to understand the value of being able to look longer term. Yeah. Short-term logic doesn't get you very far, in other words. Yeah.
Absolutely,
yeah.
it
And,
doesn't.
look at criminals. What is criminal but somebody? Now, when you make that comparison, you say, okay, so the study shows you, and then they said, well, these people turned out to be successful. The ones who did the short term, they didn't necessarily become criminals, but at the same time, go and say, all right, let's look at the criminal psychology. Let's show examples of criminals, take him to a jail maybe. And you'll quickly see these are all people with a short-term psychology.
Yeah.
So
I'm really kind of glad I didn't. Yeah, and I'm really kind of glad I didn't go into like psychology specifically.
Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's terrible. Exactly.
There were just
there are values to it, like for instance in this case, there is value to it, but you have to go beyond their bigger paradigm. They get caught up a little bit here. They're still part of the psychology, the superiority paradigm at a large extent.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, I am going to have to get on with my morning. Before I let you go, next week I am traveling. I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'm going to travel up to Nebraska to see my kids for Thanksgiving.
Oh, very good. Oh, very
so I'm going to be, CJ gets to see his mom for a day or two, and so
it gives a massive opportunity to implement and apply and test.
Yes. So we're going to be seeing each one of the kids, and he gets to spend time with his cousins, etc. So I am going to leave sometime tomorrow afternoon, but which means probably Monday. I don't know. I might be able to hop on with you, but I'll let you know for sure.
Sure. We'll just take it as appropriate. In other words,
okay.
No problem.
Okay.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
But I know then for sure after that.
Always like this, so no worries.
Yeah.
No worries at all.
Well, I don't like missing too many sessions because then I feel like
you lose continuity. It is important to maintain that. So even if you come on, briefly, that's fine. Try if you can. If you can't, you can't. That's it. End of story. So
okay. Well, and I will for sure. I'll keep you informed and let you know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So since you sent me the video, is there something you want me to watch in the video particularly? Because now that you've described the interview, I'm sort of not wildly enthusiastic to watch unless there's a specific purpose for doing so. If there's a purpose, then I'll become enthusiastic.
The purpose would be to see whether or not it was my thinking, or, well, let me see, what's a better way of looking at that? Is it my interview skills, or was it just this particular person was feeling, was being resistant for whatever reason? If you're going to pick up resistance, then I know, okay, it might have been me. It could have been the questions I was asking. It could have been any number of things. But I just feel like that there was a definite resistance there, like he was holding back until the very end. So, it's really rather boring. I didn't get out of him what I was hoping to. I was hoping for him to really lean into the tools of his book. But then when I looked at the book, his book is written in metaphors and stories. There's no real detail, no specifics except for one chapter. And, but yeah, so I guess just listen to it for overall, was the resistance me or was it him?
Okay. Okay.
Because
Just
I
look
may
for
have gone into it with that preconceived notion of this isn't going to work. I may have. And if that's the case, it's something I need to watch for.
Yeah. It may have been a self-fulfilling prophecy, in other words.
There, exactly.
Yeah.
So I guess just look for that and more or less, just kind of, I guess, see if you can pick up or observe something in him. But I just, it was like, dude, where's your emotions? Where's your affect here? Just flat. So at one point he started to laugh a little. It's like, oh yeah, okay, you cracked a joke. That's good.
Interesting. All right. So I was looking at from a context of kind of
Sure.
looking at from discernment and seeing, what's
Yes.
there's a moreness, something else is going on here.
Yes. There was something else that was going on, and I just didn't feel good about the interview itself.
Yeah. All right. I'll have a look.
So, and I find it interesting.
Good, and that's important. The ending, even if things aren't going well, make sure to always end well.
Yeah, always. And I did justice, I believe, to the podcast as much as I could. I discovered at the end, I mean, there weren't any notifications coming in on my side, but on his side, he must have received a couple of notices because the buzz came through. And yeah, so different noises and things like that are picked up. So, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I will let you go, and it's okay. Not every interview is going to be 100%, right?
Yeah, no, but it's still, it ended well, and that's important. It's the same thing with the client. Always make sure you end on a positive, a very powerfully emphasized positive. Always. Always. That's what people remember.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. All right. I will talk to you soon.
Brilliant.
Have a good one, Phil.
Awesome. You too, Sher. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Bye-bye.